a big fan of life, people, and hockey. How you doing, Henny?
Thanks, Rod. And that gig looks great. And there'll be plenty of good parking to be had when you go to that game in South Florida in Sunrise in the next few days. But they've got a good hockey club down there, and there's going to be plenty to cheer about. Nice building, great concessions, and a must if you're ever down that way. But I'm looking forward to this Leaf season, I'll tell you that. And it was an extremely disappointing spring. I mean, those guys, I hate to use the term choke because it's such a disrespectful description of what happened, and I'm not going to use that term. But I am going to say things tightened up, and there are great expectations that are certainly held by all of Leafs Nation with this hockey club that they've got. And the guys have to know that it's time to take that next step, make the playoffs, and win at least a round moving forward. Something they were capable of doing last spring but did not do, but that is the expectation that should happen this time around.
Henny, you come out guns a-blazing. I just want to say I walked 1.2 miles parking for the Dolphins game on Sunday. I don't expect that for the Panthers. But listen, a few questions in my mind here. They're very excited in Florida with the addition of Joe Thornton with the Panthers for this season. When you look back at the Joe Thornton era of the Toronto Maple Leafs, how would you describe it?
I think as he came described, he was to provide some balance in that dressing room. And they had a bit of it's John Tavares' team. But having Joe there, Wayne Simmons, these guys provide a bit of balance in what was a young dressing room. This room is no longer young. Mitch and company have all been there for 5+ years. William Nylander's going into his 7th year. So Joe brought that. But what we saw from Joe and what they're going to see in Florida on the ice, he's slow. He's not as quick as he once was, nor should he be. But he's going to provide a veteran presence on a team that is certainly capable of going to the next level. And I think he's going to help that in many ways, more so off the ice than on the ice. Still a very capable player, but in this very fast National Hockey League, Joe's days are numbered, and good for him for an opportunity to go to Florida. There isn't state tax down there. Financially, it made sense for him. And, he's playing at the NHL minimum, and he's going to give the maximum, especially emotionally with what that team needs, given where they went out last season, what's expected of them this time around. And for Coach Q, a nice guy to have in the room as a liaison between him and the bench.
Yeah, well, that was, I woke up this morning thinking, what's the one thing I wanted to ask Kenny? And I know it sounds weird that it would be about Joe Thornton, but he was supposed to add so much, and I guess he did, but I just feel like, Paul, that the Leafs losing in Game 7, losing the 3-1 series lead, and I'll be honest, man, I felt they looked disinterested in Game 7. Like I tweeted, do they not care? Because that's what it looked like. And it just seems like that's all been shoved under the carpet. Is that unspoken here in training camp as they open the preseason Saturday against the Montreal Canadiens? I just don't see a lot of buzz about where's the heart of this Leafs team, man? Am I missing it?
What happened in that series, Rod, is not under the carpet. It's a big pile on top of the carpet, and it's up to the Leafs over the course of this season and next spring to swat it away. They underperformed. I know JT was not in the lineup, but they should have won that game with what they had, up 3-1, 2 overtime games subsequently that they both lost. That said, full credit to the Montreal Canadiens and what they were able to do. If anything, it's going to serve as inspiration for what the Leafs have to do this time around. And as far as the criticism in these parts, I know there's a major anti-Mitch Marner sentiment going around. You might say the same for Auston as well. These are two elite generational players, and I've tweeted before, Alex Ovechkin, Steve Yzerman, they had their doubters along the way, especially Stevie Y. And it was 14 years before Steve finally won a Stanley Cup. He won one, in his 5th season, I think they finally won a series, lost in the second round. And then they were nowhere to be found beyond a first round for a few years after that. You've got to stick with what you've got. It is a very tough league in which to play. The expectations may be high in Toronto. Yes, they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. That's not on Mitch. That's not on Auston. what they've been able to do the last few years is, and what they're capable of doing next spring is on them as well. I think they're going to be up to it. And it's just interesting with the economics of the NHL these days. You've got so many getting this amount of money, the rest getting this amount of money, and you've got to find somewhat of a decent middle class to help to get you moving forward, because beyond the top four, salary-wise, there's Nick Ritchie, et cetera, but he's middle class. The rest of this Toronto team has got to be a talented group, all making 1.5 and below in which to get things done. We'll see. There's a lot of pressure here. I think the guys are up to it. In fact, I know they are.
That's interesting. Very interesting comments on that, because it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's always going to be pressure, right? Mm-hmm. But it feels heightened. But I want to talk about goaltending, Henny, because you've been covering this team for a day or two. Like, when I look at Leafs teams that have done something, if we want to go back to Johnny Bower, and I'm not joking, they had a name, a guy, Felix, Eddie the Eagle, Cujo in the Pat Quinn run. And I thought it was going to be Freddie Anderson. He's gone. Jack Campbell does not strike fear in shooters' hearts, I don't think. Like, how are they in goal for this season, given the fact that it's kind of cup or bust? How do you feel about that?
Well, right now, I think on paper, number one is Jack Campbell. But in reality, the guy who's coming in beside him, and Peter Mrazek, might be the true number one. I know they're both 29 years of age. They've both been a while longer, but Mrazek has been a starter a lot longer than Jack is. I think what's going to happen is you're going to get a platoon system where the two are going to complement each other the entire season long. And I think they're both up to it. And both contracts combined are about $5.5 million, which is where it would have cost them really to resign Frederik Andersen. So it's a question mark. The even bigger question mark is if one of those two guys gets hurt, Rod, who's the number three guy? They've got Ian Scott with the Marlies, Joseph Woll. Both those two are not ready to come up to the National Hockey League just yet. So they've got to hope that one of Campbell and one of Mrazek can stay healthy for most of the season. Campbell hasn't shown that previously in his career, but he's got an awful lot to build upon, which was just an incredible run last year in that bubble in the Canadian division. He's a confident guy. I only worry about him and how he beats himself up mentally over certain goals and allegedly letting his team down. He's got to stay cool, confident, and let the team psychologist work with him to make sure that he stays positive. But I think he complimenting Peter Mrazek, they've got a chance to go a long way. But the big question will be in front of them without a guy like Zach Bogosian and the toughness that he brought to the blue line, because they don't really have that prototypical tough guy in front of the net, just as to how adept the Leafs are going to be in front of those two goaltenders in terms of keeping the goals against down. They were much improved in that regard last year. I know it's a priority for Sheldon Keefe moving forward.
I'm sure you haven't done a lot of interviews lately where the name Johnny Bower's come up, I wouldn't think. Have you, Henny? I appreciate the goaltending analysis, by the way. As a goalie,
but you're right. And Turk Broda was Turk Broda was the other guy we didn't mention. But you're right. You can name them all in one hand. And Toronto doesn't have that this year. They've got goaltenders by committee. And technically you could say two backups. But in this day and age, it's hard to find a number one, and they hope they've drafted one, or at least two in either Scott or Woll, but that's not to be found out for a couple of years just yet.
Couple of rapid fires. Is the Atlantic Division the toughest division in the National Hockey League?
I think it is. I really think it is. And you think about the race to get to that top three. I don't know what the window is for Tampa, but if it's narrowing slowly. You know what the Boston Bruins are going to bring. They are a tough hockey club, although their window is narrowing. And I think there's a chance here for Toronto to sort of learn from the previous disappointments and maybe compete with Boston on a long-term basis and perhaps even edge them in for that second spot. I don't think there's any doubt that this is Tampa's division to lose. The other team is Florida that we've talked about. And we'll go from there. Ottawa's up and coming, but they're still young in their development. Buffalo's not even close yet. And so I think at least for those elite three teams, and I include Toronto in that group, it's as tough as you're going to get, especially when you've got to play each other, 4 to 6 times a season.
Yeah, and I guess my last one when I said rapid fire was I saw you and was Sean Simpson in Ottawa kind of going back and forth in a good way on Twitter about the Sens. What do you expect out of the Sens? Just to look up the road, they're going to be better, but they're not going to challenge the Leafs for points, are they?
Not yet. They're 2 to 3 years away from where Toronto is now. And what I'm finding interesting is all the talk about, do they get Tkachuk signed on time? We know what happened to Willie Nylander. He didn't get signed till, well, my God, halfway into the season. Took him a full year to regroup. But I'm hoping for Ottawa's sake that they can get this thing done sooner than longer, whether it be a bridge or not, because he's the heart and soul of that hockey club. But, they've been through it with Auston. They've been through it with Mitch. Ottawa is still developing and is approaching this. And we'll see whether they've got an owner who's going to be willing to ante up to pay these guys what NHL economics say they have to be paid. Otherwise, Ottawa's just going to be treading water and not able to get to where Toronto is. Toronto's in a position to compete for a Stanley Cup. I firmly believe that. We'll see where they're at in terms of injuries and whatnot. Ottawa's still a good 3 years away from that point in time, given their youth and the ability to sign some of their top-level talents whose contracts are now coming up, including the big guy, Tkachuk. So we'll see, but it's going to be fun. They always play Toronto tough.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it's not too far away, right around the corner, Habs and Leafs on Saturday. Henny, always appreciate the time. It's been a fantastic preview. Glad to see you still on the beat, my man. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, Rod. Enjoy your time in South Florida. It's a little better than South Regina right now.
Thank you, buddy. You got that right. The good man, Paul Hendrick, joining us from Henny Tweets. Joining us here on episode number 575 of the RP Show, Canada's daytime sports talk show, ironically coming to you from South Florida. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of the Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.